I think I wrote the book now because I felt like I was at the end of a musical journey that started, many years ago, many decades ago. And at my age, I thought, I'll get it all down before I forget. Also, I wanted it to be a help and maybe a guide for young people starting in the music industry these days. The moments that I chose were the big moments that changed my perspective of everything. So obviously seeing the Beatles, David Bowie, because he was so revolutionary, he changed everything. Punk, which was an attitude that I've carried with me forever. And acid house, which was also another cultural revolution. So they're all cultural revolutions, really. I didn't really choose to leave anything out, to be honest. I thought most of what I wrote about was relevant to my story. I think it had to be formative. I mean, I was so young. My mum took me, but what it did was it opened my eyes that people stood on a stage and played music and people who were watching went crazy. And for me, that was so exciting. I mean, you couldn't hear them. They didn't have PA systems in those days. It was just, their guitar amps, etc. And it was screaming, drowned it out. But it was just the excitement, the anticipation of a band coming on. And when they come on, it was just wonderful. Paul Morley was my first choice. And I think I would have struggled a little bit if I tried to write it myself at first. That didn't happen. And then I thought, I need someone who's been on a very similar journey. Paul had a book and magazine stall in Hillgate in Stockport when I was just before punk, leading in through to punk. So I kind of knew him. I knew him from there. I knew him from going to the games at Man City. We were into similar things. His knowledge of the things that I was going to talk about in the book was vast. So that was a good key. And lo and behold, it really worked. We really got on through the whole process and yeah, we loved it. I chose them because they're all key faces in my story. I mean, Martin Fry, I grew up with. We went to school together and we discovered punk together. Johnny, I met before the Smiths, working in Ex-Clothes in Manchester, and we came through that early 80s, putting the Smiths' first gigs on, and growing up together really around the Haçienda in its early days. Noel, I met later, but was also quite essential friend in the 90s when Britpop and everything happened. And, we were part of a movement out of Manchester that was taking over the country, really. Calvin, also, I met when he was stacking shelves at M&S in Dumfries. And, we still work together up to this date. That's probably 20 years later. They're really key figures in my career. When, especially when I wasn't making the music myself, it's this role that I've always had of A&R. There wasn't a massive challenge bringing it to Manchester audiences. When I first played it at the Haçienda, when the prototype house records were coming through, they were like 4 to the floor, but they were quite song-based more than now. And a lot of the kids who used to be into Northern Soul were coming to the Haçienda and dancing to them because they liked that incessant beat. They had to have a lot more stamina because Northern Soul records were 3.5 minutes and these were 5 and 6 minutes. But it started like that, and I never consciously, it was only about late 1987, early 88, where I thought this could be a global thing because you've got the bass, you've got 4 to the floor drums and a bass line, and you can put whatever you want on top of it. It was like a blank canvas. I kind of saw that early. That's when I made the Decoy record. So it didn't feel like, it felt more like a passion rather than a chore or something that I had to get over to people. I also think that DJs, we put our neck on the line, we put our taste on the line. If people like it, you're going to be a successful DJ, and if they don't, then get another job, really. I always liked taking risks. I think Bowie said that if you can touch your toes in the water, you should walk a bit further out, so you're out of your depth, because it's far more exciting. And most of the things that David Bowie said, I totally agree with 1,000,000%. But I think if I had to pick two, I would say doing M People, because I was just coming out of like, the whole acid house scene. It was all fast and furious, and I wanted to write songs. So I was thinking, well, there might be a backlash from underground clubbers, because I want to do pop songs, I want to do Motown style songs. That, and then definitely going and working for a major record label 20 years ago. When I first got asked to do that, I just laughed and said, there's no way I could stand on that side of the dividing line, between artist and record company. But yeah, both of them turned out to be really successful, and I'm really glad that I took the risks. I think the difference in Manchester and the difference in Manchester and London is, in Manchester we look outwards. We don't look into ours. We look outwards, and so I just think I remember seeing Anthony Burgess, the novelist, do a talk in a bookshop in Manchester, and he said that, and I always thought, wow, that's actually really true. And yeah, I mean, when punk rock happened, this city was a very grey, oppressed, poverty, poor city, and nobody had anything going. So that was kind of, we had 3-day weeks, we had running out of power, the whole country was just a shambles. And punk was an expression of youth saying, right, we've had enough. And, Acid House in 1988 was after, I don't know how many years, 15 odd years of Margaret Thatcher, who decimated the country and decimated the arts. And they were all fightbacks. They were all like the youth fighting against the establishment, because the establishment were letting us down. I suppose that's got to be the Summer of Love at the Haçienda, when you saw the unbridled joy of people and people from all different walks of life. And there was doctors and bricklayers and clothing designers and Jack the Lads and all sorts of people all dancing together in unity. It was also brilliant because it was a secret society, because nobody knew about ecstasy. The authorities didn't, and we made hay. From a professional point of view, no, there's no chapters that I would rewrite, because I think you have to, as David Bowie said, go out of your depth. So there'll be the odd thing where I've thought, oh, that wasn't a great idea, or that maybe I shouldn't have done that. But it's all part of your process. You've got to do that. You have to do that. Yeah, I have very few regrets, very few. I would give them all the same advice that I was given and I worked on. That was, don't think about whether you're going to be successful or not. Do what you want to do. Do artistically what you want to do. Don't let anyone else say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You'll never make it doing that. because loads of people have said that to me. Just believe in what you do, believe in your art, believe in your soul, and just go for it. You know, it's a different landscape, obviously now. You know, but adapt to it and go for it. The biggest shift from when I started in the business is obviously people bought records. Now they're all up on platforms, you know, for more or less free. You pay for a subscription. You know, I used to do paper rounds, newspaper deliveries, all sorts of things to buy a record when it came out. It used to come out on a Friday. I used to almost be waiting for that album to land or that record to land. You don't have that expectation anymore. Everything's there straight away. So that's a big difference. Also, you know, I have to say, record companies are still not paying artists like they should do. In our day, from a £12 CD, the artist got £1. Now, from you know, I don't know, 100,000 downloads, you'll get pennies. So it forces artists to behave in a different way. I don't think it's very healthy, to be honest. I think that needs to be sorted out. I think what Manchester's given me is that spirit of, like a pioneering spirit, that you look outwards to the world. I mean, you know, back in the late 70s, we were doing swaps with people in New York. We had Factory New York and Detroit and Amsterdam and Brussels and all over the place. We wanted to be part of the rest of the world. That's what we did. And what I've given back, I don't know. I mean, I think if you walk around the city and see, it's probably the most exciting city in Britain now. Well, it is the most exciting city in Britain now. And I think we've been a big part of helping that. We were a big part of starting that process, really. When we built the club, it seemed that the whole redevelopment was nothing to do with us, but it seemed that it kick-started the whole thing. You know, when we opened the Haçienda India house opened, and we all, you know, Noel had a flat there, loads of us had flats, you know. We were the first dwellers in the city. I lived above the Arndale Centre, and if I wanted a pint of milk, or in those days, you know, some cigarettes, I'd have to get in the car and drive 20 minutes to go and buy them because there was nothing here. So I think we were quite a big part of that.